Going through my code for the first video, I import all of my packages, including numpy, matplotlib, enme496y, and CV2, even though I don't use all of them, and then I print all packages imported to make sure that it imported, and then next I'm going to go through all of my functions. So the first one, snip image, that goes through with our main picture slash video and cuts it, and so it doesn't show the top and the bottom of the car and the sky. That would distract us. And then next, going into our next, which is the mask image function, it passes in an image, and then it uses a mask and points and CV to fill convex poly, which mask it into the trapezoidal-ish shape that doesn't let it getting the lane lines from the other side. Next, I'm going to talk about the function of the threshold image. And so first it converts it from GR to HSV, which allows it to get a white upper and lower limits. And then after it goes through and do that, we convert it from the HSV values back to gray values. Next, we have our blur function that we pass in the image to, and using a Gaussian blur with a kernel size of a 15 by 15, we blur the image to help with the lane detection. And lastly, we have our function of the edge image that passes in an image using a canny with a low and a high threshold to define the edges and show them on screen. Next, I'll talk about my main function. This is where all the magic happens. And so first I start with defining the stream, which is uploading which specific test video I'm using, and then it starts the video writer with the 4cc and the output to record our specific video on my device. And so then I have a while true loop that means it's always happening. And so first I grab a frame and then I read it, and if there isn't a frame, if the video isn't playing, then I break from this while loop. Then I perform all the functions that I have mentioned previously, so the snip image, the mask image, the threshold image, the blur image, the edge image. And then this is where my specific code starts, and so I define lines using hue lines with my edge, so that's the last picture, to specifically find the different edges. And so then I create 4 different open arrays, so right row, left row, right theta, and left theta. And using the hue lines, we get a row and a theta value, and so I want to define which side because we're going to use different colors for that. Next, I have the statement if lines is not none. So this statement basically means as long as there is a lines, then we proceed with the code. So as long as it's not the first iteration. And so I say for in range 0 to the length of lines, so from 0 all the way to however many lines there are, I'm going to define that the first value in the 3D array of lines is row and the second value is theta. This is because the hue lines give us both a row and theta value. And so I want to differentiate between the left and the right side. So I say if row is greater than 0, I store those values on the right row and right theta using the dot append. And then else, so if row is not greater than 0, I store it in the left values using the dot append. And then I have another if statement. So as long as there is a right theta, right row, left theta, and left row, so that means as long as it's not the first iteration, I will proceed with the code. So then the way I did my code is I used the np.medium function. So I found the medium of all 4 of the values, and then I created new values trying to put it in the xy plane. And so I use np.cosine, np.sine, and then determine the x naught and the y naught values and the a and b values to put into our point function. And then at the end, I plotted using cv2.line with our specific value, and then changing the colors depending and the line size for which side it was on. And so then I write the output so I can save my video, and then I have at the very end, I show a bunch of the different iterations we had. So whether it's the full frame value, the snip value, the mask value, the threshold, the blurred, the images, and then at the end of my code, I just release everything to make sure that nothing breaks. So this is my code for the first video, and I decided to show you how my edges, threshold, and blur also work with like the snip value and also the mask. And so as you can see at the beginning, it is working really well because there are clear lines on the threshold and edges, and the blurring is working really well. But as we approach this red car, the lines aren't as consistent, and so with all the interference, it's like a little more choppy but still going well. Now we're approaching where on the right side it's losing the lane line and it doesn't have anything in the mask, and so that's why it's flashing. And the left side is also a little choppy, as you can see through the edges and thresholds. But now we're back to normal and it's going pretty consistent, following all of the lines pretty well, keeping it steady. And then as we're approaching under the bridge, the shadow is blocking it, and so it's not picking up on the differentials of. For the second video, my code is fairly similar, but I had to change it because the video sizes were different, so I had to adjust the mask and shape drastically, and I also had to change the threshold value because it was more sunny, and the difference between the light and dark colors were more hard to find. And then I also slightly changed the plotting values and points, and I also used a different weight key because I found that it worked better for this one. So this is my video for the second video I had to do, and unfortunately my code did not work as well for this video, and I think it has to do with the brightness and the lighting, and then I also probably could have experimented more with my threshold values, edges, and blurs. But so at the beginning it is kind of really flashy because, as you can tell through the blur, the threshold, that it's not as good. When the line is perfect, it is working really well, and for some reason my left values are getting distracted, and it appears like it's getting values in the medium function isn't working well because it's getting some random tidbits in it. Right here it is working perfectly, and I'm very happy with how it worked for the middle, and so that's why I decided to go with this, because it was working well. But now it is doing the weird thing with the left hand side, and then as we're approaching the right hand side with the merged lanes, it's also getting a little funky. And then towards the end of the video we have the choppiness again of the lights flashing, which I think is because the lines are very spread out on the road, and then the shadow from the car on the left side is also impeding it from sensing the lines. Thank you for watching.